You go to the top of the hill. As you rise higher and higher, then you find that your vista becomes vast. And when you see a thing from the top of the hill, you have better perspective, and all the particular facts also fall in their place better. Now in the Veda, when you say Brihat, it is even vaster than that. There is a concept even in ordinary logic. This is the concept of all. What is the meaning of all? And in Western thinking, there is a lot of discussion on this word all. It is not possible here to enter into that aspect of discussion on all, because that will take us into far different domain altogether. But I only leave it with you this question of thinking on what is all. It's a word we use so often, and it is said that reasoning is impossible without reference to all. The normal example which is given in ordinary logic is that Socrates is mortal can be derived as a proposition when you know that Socrates is a man, and only when you know that all men are mortal. So unless you know that all men are mortal, you cannot deduce that Socrates is mortal. It's a simple example of a logical reasoning. But there, what is important is the reference to all. What is all? Now, it is this concept of all which Veda says you can experience. At present, although you use the word all, nobody can say that he has seen all. The Veda claims, and that is a height of this psychological understanding which you find in the Veda. Brihat is also known as Vishwa. There is a concept in the Veda, constantly you find Vishwa. Vishwa is a word which is for all in the Veda. Vishvedeva, all the gods. Now this word Vishwa and Brihat are constantly associated in the Veda. Anokrata, you have written here, Vishwato Yantu, let it come from all sides. Now that experience of all is actually called in the Veda Satyam. Satyam is not an ordinary perception of ordinary fact which is particular, but experience, not only concept of all, but experience of all. Sri Aurobindo defines Satyam of the Veda as fundamentally a concept of all comprehension. This word all comprehension is what Sri Aurobindo calls in the Life Divine. In fact, in the Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo has written 5 long chapters on the supermind. And one of the important chapters is the triple status of the supermind. What are the 3 statuses of the supermind? And this Sri Aurobindo says that this is described in the Veda. He has taken from the Veda, but of course expressed in the language which is more accessible to the modern times. But the concepts which are taken from the Veda. The 3 statuses of the supermind are the following. In the first status of the supermind, there is all comprehension. Now, according to the Vedic knowledge and according to the Life Divine, the supreme reality is unlimited, is infinite. And from from the infinite, whatever comes out, infinite contains all. There is nothing outside it. These are all our poor ways of understanding all. Nothing outside it. Everything is contained in it. Even the word infinite today is considered to be extremely difficult to define. Bertrand Russell, while analyzing the word infinite, he said the whole concept is odd. He doesn't say wrong or false or ununderstandable or should not be used. He said the idea of infinite is an odd idea. Why? Because you take two series of infinity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there is no end of it. Any figure that you can think of is a part of the series. Is all and yet infinite, unending. Then you take another series. 2, 4, 8, 16, etc., etc. Is also unending. Now, in the first series, the number of figures that you will have, in the second series, the number of figures you will have will be smaller. And yet, both will be infinite. Now, when you examine this concept of infinite in this way, what is infinite? Smaller or bigger? He is not able to answer this question. He said, you can only say the idea of infinite is odd. This is the concept with which the Vedas starts, as it were. The Vedic knowledge is the knowledge of the infinite. The infinite which is beyond, neither here nor there, nor today nor yesterday. Nanu namasti no shvaha. It is that kind of reality. And that reality is manifestation, is manifesting. Now, this manifesting consciousness, according to Sri Aurobindo and according to the Veda, this manifestation is a conscious manifestation. In the Big Bang theory, it's not a conscious exclusion, but in the Vedic manifestation, it's a conscious manifestation. There is a consciousness which holds all, as it were, all comprehending, in which all is understood. It's comprehending. The important word is consciousness is comprehension. There's understanding. But understanding can be also apprehending. But this is comprehending. Apprehending is only when you take cognizance of this or that or that. When you say I have comprehended, it means that all aspects I have taken into account and I have comprehended, I have understood now fully. So the first status of the supermind is all comprehending consciousness. The Vedas says such a consciousness exists. And this is a very important claim. Such a consciousness exists. And it is there, it is called Satya. So when it says Agni Satya, Satyashchitra Shavastama, it looks a very simple word. But if you examine the Vedic text and see what actually Satya means, in the ritualistic interpretation, Satya means the true. True in the sense that true in its effect. If you can ask for a certain boon and that boon comes about, it is true. And that is the meaning of Satya. But if you examine the whole Veda and see what is Satya, you will find that Satya is this all-comprehending consciousness. That which is realized, that which is seen in all-comprehending consciousness, that is Satya. And that is the first step. Then Veda claims that such a consciousness exists. And that consciousness is Swamdhamam of Agni. That is the real home. Agni has its own home. And it is in its own home, Svedame. When it comes into its own home, it brightens up and fully blazes up. At lower levels, Agni is not so bright. It is not its own home, it has come down from there. It is put into the inconscient so that it can be enlightened. Therefore, it is not so bright, but when it rises up and goes to its home, its fullness is manifested. So Agni is the one whose home is there. That is why if you worship Agni, if you call Agni, if you take Agni as your companion, then it leads you and takes you to what? What is the goal? It takes you to this all-comprehending consciousness, which exists. This is the claim of the Veda. You can say that it is all imagination, fiction. Fine. Even as an imagination, to say that there is an all-comprehending consciousness somewhere requires a great boldness even to imagine. But the Vedic claim is that this is seen. What is Kavi? Kavi is a seer. And seer of what? He is a seer of all comprehending consciousness. You are not a seer unless you are established in this all comprehending consciousness. In the Indian psychology, this all comprehending consciousness is a starting point, you might say, because Veda speaks of it, and our entire Indian psychology is based upon the idea of an all comprehending consciousness. We can go on this subject because it's a very large subject. But since I spoke of triple status, I will just conclude the two other statuses of the supermind. The second is apprehending consciousness. This comprehending consciousness is capable also of apprehending consciousness. That is to say, although there is an all-comprehending vision available to that consciousness, it is not devoid of a capacity to concentrate on particulars either. It is simultaneous. It can comprehend, it can apprehend. It is like a mother working in a kitchen who has to look after a child at the same time. The mother has a complete comprehending consciousness regarding the kitchen, regarding the work of cooking. She keeps an eye on the child also. Because she is keeping an eye on the whole, she does not therefore have the incapacity of looking also, concentrating on the child. So while doing many other things, if she concentrates also on the child, it's an apprehending consciousness. This is an analogy. But a comprehending consciousness which can also look into particulars and concentrate on particulars at the same time, simultaneously. Normally, when you start from a large vision to a particular, you lose the large. When you have particular vision, you lose one or the other. You can't combine together. In the supramental consciousness, you have both together, the consciousness of all, consciousness of any particular part and all the parts, and perception of all parts of all sides of things. You know, Leibniz, when he wanted to explain something of this kind, in fact, I regard Leibniz as one of the great philosophers of the West, who comes very close to the Vedic knowledge. He spoke of a consciousness which he called all consciousness. And he said that each individual is a monad. He used the word for each individual a monad. And he said, a monad, however, although it is a particular one, it has a reflection of all. It perceives all. Although he says that monad is windowless, it doesn't have the capacity of crossing its boundaries. And yet it is capable of reflecting all. But from its own point of view. Now something of this kind happens in the apprehending consciousness. If you examine the Vedic idea of apprehending consciousness, it is a perception of each, of all, from its specific point of view. But supermind also knows what this specific is, the perception of all, what that specific perception of all, of the other one specific perception of all. It is something like having in a room all mirrors all around. He himself has given this example, that if there is a room in which there are all around mirrors, what do you see? If you can perceive, first of all, there is no end of it. You will see what is called infinity. There is no end of reflections. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And if you look into this mirror, you will get one perception of all from that point of view. If you look into this, you will get perception of all from this point of view. And if you are able to rise up, you can have all of them together. This is an analogical example I can give you, because Leibniz has given this example in one of his writings. And this is very interesting for us to understand something of this kind. Now, when therefore Vedas speaks of Satya, it speaks first of all comprehending consciousness, apprehending consciousness, and third, projecting consciousness. This consciousness not only comprehends and apprehends, it also projects. Now, what is projection? I will not go into it because that will be another long statement. I leave it at this moment that there are three statuses of the supermind: the comprehending consciousness, apprehending consciousness, and projecting consciousness. So whenever the word Satya is used in the Veda, it is this all-comprehending, apprehending, and projecting consciousness. And such a consciousness exists. And what Sri Aurobindo points out is that Veda states, that's a psychological truth, is brought out by Sri Aurobindo, that Veda contains truths of the psychology not only of man, but psychology of God, of the highest consciousness. Because basically psychology is a study of consciousness, and God is consciousness. Therefore, psychology is not only human psychology, it's divine psychology. And therefore Veda is a book of divine psychology, but also which connects divine psychology with human consciousness. And therefore it's a comprehensive psychological work. Now, on this subject much can be said, and we shall also have chance more to say. But I thought that we shall go to one more text which Sri Aurobindo has given on Agni, and maybe that some of the things that I have spoken just now will be illustrated in that particular statement. I am taking this particular example for three reasons. One is that it continues by exposition of the idea of Agni as we find in the Veda. We have already the introduction to this idea in the very first sutta. This sutta is the first sutta of the third mandala. That was the first mandala. This is the third mandala of the Veda, and the first sutta of it. It is attributed to Vishwamitra. The second reason why I am taking it is that when you read for the first time, you will have a direct experience of what are these verses like. We speak of Veda very often, but it is when we are acquainted with some material. When you come across some text of the Veda, you get an experience of the Veda, first-hand experience. And this is a long sutta, therefore it gives a good experience, at least symbolic experience, of what the Vedic verses are like. And third is that its meaning, psychological interpretation that Sri Aurobindo gives, when it is understood in the way in which Sri Aurobindo explains this, it gives you a kind of a perception of the wealth and depth of the Vedic psychology and Vedic knowledge. Why we call Veda as a book of knowledge. What is the knowledge in it? Because very often Veda is dismissed either as karma kanda or at the most as upasana. You do some prayers. But that it contains knowledge, this aspect. See, there is a claim that Veda contains various kinds of disciplines of knowledge. There is physics in it, there is chemistry in it, there is mathematics in it, astronomy in it, psychology in it, philosophy in it. Many kinds of knowledge are to be found in the Veda. This is a claim. In fact, Dayananda Saraswati, when he interpreted the Veda, he wrote a book, Rigveda Bhashya Bhumika, in which he has tried to explain Veda as a book of knowledge. And he has even said that Veda contains all disciplines of knowledge. Sarva Vidya. Now, this is a proposition which is being controverted all over, in fact. How can you say that Veda contains all disciplines of knowledge? Now, I am not going to discuss that question now, whether it contains all disciplines of knowledge or not. Even today, many attempts are being made